Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show brought to you by a real statistics professor. This is college football week 5, the week 4 recap, along with the recap for the season, and just kind of reminding you again how last year went as well, just to kind of, again, as a reminder, like, you know, when you see 8%, 5% ROI, we actually did a little bit better last year. So those are not crazy numbers. Last week was a great week. The overall A+ and B+ grades, the recommended plays, up 12 units. Because, Jared, you've been complaining all weekend about a couple games that you thought we should have won as well. So I guess that's really good, and we can complain about games and we still had double-digit unit wins and like a 40-some-odd% ROI.
Yes, normally you're complaining about, you know, a handful of games, and those are the ones that are difference between, you know, breaking even, being just up, just down. So to have a weekend like this where I still felt like we left some, you know, no game's easy, but some ones that were definitely going our way for 45 minutes of the game. That's definitely a good feeling to have. I will take it. I will take those 2 losses based on how the rest of the weekend went.
Yeah, it was really good. We talked last week, you know, how I'd kind of made an adjustment that I think really affected that cross-conference play. We're about to get into more conference games, so that adjustment really won't be seen quite as much. But last year, once we got into conference play, the model did really well anyway. So I'm really optimistic still going forward. It's been, you know, a good year so far. You know, what we say all the time, right? The plan is we're going to lose a lot of picks. We're going to win a lot of picks, but to win more when we win, then we lose when we lose. And I think you've seen that from the weeks this year. We've had 4 weeks. We've had 2 winning weeks and 2 losing weeks, but the 2 winning weeks, we've won more than the 2 losing weeks. And that's kind of the whole thing that we talk about. We don't know what's going to happen in one game, but in the long run, using some of these mathematical tools that I've built, you know, we did pretty well. Again, we're going to talk a couple of things real quick here before we get going. This is an educational show. We do talk a lot about educational things with betting and bankroll management. We kind of drop some of those things in and out, and we discuss a lot of those things over our Discord as well. The time staple, again, will be in the show description for when the picks start if you don't want to hear about last week. But it is important, I think, to kind of just reflect back a little bit. We're going to do this a little bit less each week, a little bit shorter of a time, because we'll kind of have hit everything. But as you know, the earlier on, making sure we're really kind of learning some of these things. There's 34 teams, you know, 50 games a week. And so nobody can watch really all of these. And so just trying to make sure that, you know, we're all kind of learning as much about all these teams as possible. Because, Jared, the first thing we're talking about is Clemson offense. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago where I said, hey, I wonder if maybe Dabo's just going to throw caution to the wind and go for the big play and say what I've been doing hasn't worked. I was wondering that after that big win against App State where they put up, you know, about 300 points in the first half. And they just kept that rolling into NC State. Is Clemson's offense real? Is Clemson back? Or where are we with Clemson?
And it's one of those I have no idea is the answer to the question. I am definitely on alert to the show. I am definitely on alert, though, that they might be back. And it's just, even once they moved on from DJ and went to Klubnik last year, you still didn't see a lot of downfield passing, a lot of explosive plays. It just still felt like they were kind of going bit by bit down the field. And then, of course, you know, they played Georgia the first game of the season. It's completely possible that the talent that Georgia has just didn't allow that to happen in that game. But from what we've seen from the couple other games, it's like the players are playing better. It's like the coaches are calling the game better. It's just every single thing seems to be working for them. And going forward, if they can just get 80%, 85% of what they've had the past few weeks, I mean, they're going to be really good. Again, the defense has never been the question with Clemson. And so I am definitely on high alert now. Yes, it was against App State, who might be down a little bit. Yes, it's against NC State, who clearly is not as good as we might have thought they would be coming into the season. But
Clemson, I feel like that's something we say every year.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I don't know if I've ever been confident backing Clemson in the entire run that we've been doing this show, but they might be one more good offensive game away from me being back on the Clemson bandwagon, which coming into the season, I thought there was no way that was going to happen, but they have definitely proved it wrong.
And especially after that first game where, Georgia's got a good defense. Duh. Like, I'm not breaking any news there. Mm-hmm. But we kind of thought with all offseason of prep, we would have seen a little bit more than that. And The model actually ranks Clemson's offense as better than their defense right now on a per possession, per play, whatever basis. It really does believe, and Cade Klubnik, the model's got him at the 27th best quarterback, line with our boy Diego Pavia, right where we're from TCU. We talk about who can light it up. Riley Leonard at Notre Dame. I mean, with Jordan McLeod, Will Rogers. I mean, not that he's the best quarterback, but a bunch of those are solid quarterbacks. And Cade Klubnik belonged to that group last year, but you make a good point. When they brought him that first year, when they put him in, I thought it was a mistake. I didn't really. I think the only benefit that it could have been would have been the clubhouse dynamic was the only thing. But it was a massive downgrade from a talent perspective. He was not ready. He was too young. But then last year, with that whole offseason as the guy, they like you said, they really treated him with kid gloves. They didn't really let him open it up, and the model was just not high on him because he didn't really do much, but he maybe wasn't getting the opportunity to do much. I'm not really sure which was which, right? And this year,
you wonder now,
right? Post Georgia game, it's been like a whole different world, and so we're definitely kind of like eyeing that at this point. Again, the model really liking what they've done on offense this year, and it's hard not to with what they've done, and it's real teams. App State, NC State aren't nobodies. That Georgia game, you can't necessarily forget. You do wonder if this is an offense maybe that can flourish against mid-level defenses, decent defenses, but might struggle against the top tier. We'll find out. But like you said, this is a whole lot better for Clemson than we've seen in years.
Well, you say they might struggle against the top tier, but looking at the ACC, who is that?
That's not a problem for them in conference. It's only a problem if they were to make the playoff, really. But the Big Ten has. I feel like the Big Ten was going to be drunk this year. I think we kind of knew that from the top because we knew that Michigan would be good. We knew they would take a step back on offense, but we knew their defense would be good. And we got that win, on the money line with him here this last week, and that was a lot of fun. Which goes back to what I was saying. It wasn't that I thought Michigan was going to win the game as much as I was like, this is a coin toss game. And I think everybody can agree watching the game, that was a coin toss game. And the whole point was you give me a bunch of those at plus 200, we're going to do pretty well. But, we knew that Michigan would be decent. USC looks improved. Ohio State's obviously really good. Oregon, started off a little bit slow, but they're going to be really good. We knew the Big Ten would get crazy because the top would be so good. But then it seemed like a big drop maybe once you got past the Penn States, of the world after that top five or whatever. But we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence here. Like Nebraska obviously really took a step back here this last week, but maybe that bodes well for Illinois, who might be as good as we've seen. We thought Illinois would be good a couple of years ago. They had a little run and that kind of fizzled out. Rutgers looks pretty solid. We've been backing them a lot here as of late. We'll talk about them shortly. Indiana looks fantastic, and we knew they'd be improved, but I'm not sure we thought they'd be quite this improved. They look really good. Like there's all these teams now in that like 6 to 10 range that we really thought were like a mile behind, and now we're like, oh, maybe they're only like a quarter mile behind.
Yeah, and I would throw Washington into that mix too. I wanted to have this conversation because I think there will probably be at some point this season, and I don't know if it's going to be this week, next week, 2 weeks. There is going to be a point where we are going to be taking points with some of these mid-tier Big Ten teams against the Michigans, the USCs, the Penn States, and everything, and it's going to make you uncomfortable. But just prepare yourself now. It's going to happen. There might even be a perfect scenario. I don't know what one of them might be off the top of my head, but where there might be a little money line sprinkle on one of these teams going up against home. Yes, against one of the big teams. So it's coming, and it's going to pain you when we eventually have to fade Ohio State or fade Oregon or something like that. But I think the middle of the Big Ten is good enough that we're going to have to take the points with some of these teams and some of these big games down the road.
And there's definitely a couple of them that I'm looking at that I'm thinking I'm starting to feel more and more comfortable by the week. I mean, what we've seen from Illinois now against Kansas and Nebraska, the way they've played. Again, I think Nebraska, is better than that output that they showed against Illinois. Indiana, I'm really high on Indiana.
I love everything about Indiana.
Everything about him. We love Rourke. We've been talking about him for a couple of years now. So there's a lot there. Of course, it's funny because we said it with the Big Ten, but I mean, the Big 12 isn't the exact same, but we'll talk a lot about the Big 12 here later on in the show, where it's just going to be like mass chaos. It's all about who's on the home road, that sort of stuff. The SEC is kind of in a similar boat as well. What is going on with Auburn, though? Because I think they were a team that, Hugh Freeze, right, coming in was supposed to be bringing them back to prominence, and then the Cal game happened, then the Arkansas game last week. Now, they played probably better than that result, but if you look at what has happened there, it's got to be a massive disappointment. Given what we expected. What is your take on
that? So I would say, if you have not gone on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, and read Bo Wallace, formerly star quarterback for Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, he had some thoughts after the game. If you have not gone out and read that, I would recommend that you do. Long story short, after the game, Hugh Freeze made comments that he has made many times in the past at many of his stops. Something to the effect of, we got to find guys who aren't going to throw the ball to the other team. We got to find guys who won't fumble, a lot of blaming the team. And Bo Wallace had thoughts on that. And apparently anybody who's worked with Hugh Freeze would probably tell you, not the easiest guy to get along with. And Bo Wallace, somebody very close to Hugh Freeze. You thought if anybody might come to Hugh Freeze defense, it would be Bo Wallace. And that was certainly not the case. Bo Wallace gave his thoughts on Hugh Freeze, and then followed it up with a tweet that was something to the effect of, "You probably think I'm hammered drunk right now, but I promise I'm 100% sober as I'm telling you this."
I love a Twitter thread where someone has to say that at the end.
Yes, you need to add that disclaimer. So Auburn, the season not going how they want, they still have time to turn around, but maybe a couple of times a season, I come on here and just talk about vibes, and man, the vibes at Auburn are starting to go downhill quickly. And I don't think that Hugh Freeze is in jeopardy of losing his job. I mean, he's only been there for a year and a half, but man, it seems that there is no trust in the offense. There is no team cohesion or anything like that. Things could get bad for Auburn with, just how strong the SEC is generally top to bottom. Yeah. Their season could go bad quickly.
Yeah. And again, we talked about in the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC, there's going to have some teams that have that happen, and it's just going to be what it is. And, Auburn might be one of those. I don't remember who it was, and so I'm going to butcher the stat. So no one quote me on this, but there was something about, like, if you take Hugh Freeze's last however many stops, the end of the Liberty run, where things kind of went a little bit south. And that was part of that was the loss to New Mexico State there or whatever, when he lost in back-to-back years. And whatnot. It was something along the lines of, like, the last 14 games he's been favored in, he's lost like 10 of them outright or something. I mean, whatever it was something. It was basically like, if you put all that together at one coaching stop, he's out the door already. But the fact that it was split up a little bit, maybe gives him a little bit of hope. I don't know, but it's really, it's not good when we're still in September and we've got a coach saying things like, we need to find quarterback who doesn't throw the ball to their team. I mean, that's not really said. Quarterbacks who aren't doing that. Cam Ward. I mean, I don't know if y'all saw the clip of the play he had this last weekend against South Florida, where they're coming after him, and he just like casually just like sidesteps this guy, and is like, okay, I'm just gonna like go right here, and then I'm just gonna throw like complete under poise. I mean, he looks. When you talk about transfer portal and these quarterbacks progressing or whatever, and he's obviously come up on a bigger and bigger stage as his career, as he's kind of moved up the ladder and continued to defy expectations. He's one that I think more people are seeing by the year and just flourishing and getting better every year, looking more complete. Yeah. He looks like just what they needed. I mean, you talk about his back, question mark, is Miami back? I feel a little bit more confident saying maybe they are. And more.
Yeah, and two things on this. Number one, a lot of course, I'm sure viewers of the show remember me questioning the coaching decisions at Miami and how the coaching might be the thing that holds them back the most. Whenever you have a quarterback that's playing like Cam Ward, makes the coach's job a lot easier. When you're not getting in those, close game situations against Georgia Tech, North Carolina, whoever it might be, when your quarterback's playing so well, the offense, defense, everybody's playing so well that you don't get yourselves into those situations. That definitely makes the coach look better. So I think by him playing so well, I think that's covered up one of Miami's biggest weaknesses, which was, that late game coaching strategy. The other thought I had is I was watching Cam Ward highlights, and you want to know the name that came to my head, like who he reminded me of in that Miami uniform, Ken Dorsey. And I thought to myself, there had to have been a good quarterback at Miami since Ken Dorsey, because that was my thought. I was like, Cam Ward is by far the best quarterback that Miami has had since Ken Dorsey was there at turn of the millennium. And I thought to myself, surely Miami has had another good quarterback since Ken Dorsey. So I actually had to go do some research this weekend to see if I was crazy. And I am not crazy. And it's actually not even close that Cam Ward is the best quarterback since Ken Dorsey was there. Brad Kaya, Brock Berlin, Stephen Morris, Ja'Cory Harris, Derek King. I feel like Derek King, if he can stay healthy, Kyle Wright. I mean, it is honestly not even
Kyle
close.
Wright, the pitcher for the Braves?
Different Kyle Wright, unfortunately, from 2004 to 2007 was quarterback. It's not even close. That Cam Ward has brought something to this Miami offense that they have lacked for a long time. So I'm very excited where he could go take them this season, and definitely, no doubt he should be. Well, Travis Hunter aside, he and Travis Hunter by far and away should be the top two in the Heisman list right now.
And I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Of course, Travis Hunter, just his own animal with the fact that he plays like almost every play and does it really well on both sides of the ball. It's just something we just don't. It's the Shohei Ohtani effect, and we don't. It's just so hard to even wrap your brain around that. So it's obviously going to create a wrinkle there. We have one other thing to talk about. It actually come up pretty early here in the show, so I want to just kind of run through our recap here again. Dub Club Honor Roll is the place to be. There's a football only package if that's all you're interested in, where you could just pay one price for the entire football season, and then you still get Discord access to our football chats if you want college basketball, baseball, the works. That's where the honor roll comes in. We've got some specials right now, some trials on the all access package, and we're still offering the promo code or the promo here for the football only package, $99.99 for the first year here. A lot of discounts if you want to sign up for longer duration packages. We have a lot of people on those saving some money, and I always like it to help save you money. But again, as you can see, we're going to help you make some money. So we do appreciate you over there. If you're with us on Dub Club, quick reminders about the model. It's a player-based model. Ratings reflect the current roster. Average rate's 100 higher, implies more points. So you want to be higher if you're on offense. You don't want to be higher if you're on defense. You're projecting an average game, one game, like we said earlier. We do not know what's going to happen. But we do know, because we have a good model, that I'd love to calculate how many hours I've spent on these models at this point. It's some ungodly number. But we do know that anything is a good bet at the right price or right number. The model will give it an A, B, or C, love, like, lean. We add the plus if we like it. The first game we're going to talk about here, Thursday night, Army and Simple. And because when we talk about the conference here, the American Athletic Conference, we knew last year that this whole new thing would be happening where Army and Navy could potentially meet in the conference championship game the week before the Army-Navy game, and then play the next week. And if you go back, if you go back and you just were curious, if you're just bored, if you're watching this on one device, you have like your phone up, you have another device, and you were to just Google an article about this, I guarantee you every article you find is going to say something like, "Oh, but that's not likely to happen," or something. Army and Navy at this point are in really good positions. We didn't talk about it on show last week. We talked about it before show. We didn't cover the game, but we were thinking about like Memphis. There's no way we're touching Memphis last week against Navy. It was a terrible spot with that big win against Florida State, and then now playing a triple option team. That was just like a terrible spot. Didn't know what would happen in that game. Army doesn't have to play Memphis. Navy's already beat Memphis. There's not many other good teams in the conference. We might get an Army-Navy rematch in this weird world because we just love both these teams. We've been backing them a lot this year. I don't know what the world is coming to.
Yeah. I don't know what the financial ramifications of Army going to the American is. Like when people are leaving or joining conferences, there's like, you get a reduced portion of the money. Like, I don't know what Army's deal was, but I want Army's deal because their conference schedule in their first year is just unbelievably it's as good as it could possibly be. Army's conference schedule is Florida Atlantic, who they already beat, Rice, who they already beat, playing Temple on a short week, game that we're about to talk about here, Tulsa, UAB, East Carolina, North Texas, and UT San Antonio. And UT San Antonio not looking great so far this year. That has got to be the easiest American schedule that has been out there for at least the past 4 or 5 years. If you go on the flip side, you look at Navy. They had to play toughest game of the season, conference game of the season, probably Memphis, but they've already got that out of the way, got a win. Their remaining conference schedule is at UAB, Charlotte, Rice. 2 tricky games in November at South Florida, who can put up some points, and Tulane, who's still a tough team. But with that win already in hand against Memphis, I mean, it is something that we seriously have to consider. Start preparing ourselves for the possibility that we might get Army and Navy 2 weeks in a row. And that, I don't know how I would feel about that. I know that they put these rules in place with the thought of this would never actually happen. But if it does actually happen, are they really going to let them play 2 times in a row?
I think so. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, no. That's the rule. That's how it's written. But like, are Army and Navy going to want to do that? I don't know. Anyway, something to think about. But on to the game here. Army, lay the points with them. I mean, Temple's bad. Temple is really bad. Short week to get ready for the triple option. Both Army and Navy. Army was doing this a little bit last year. Navy really this year has implemented some new things into the offense. There's no way Temple is going to be ready. And even if Temple was ready, not sure it matters. Army's good. Temple's very bad.
Yeah, it is that simple. We're going to lay the 13.5 with Army. I'm going to kind of mention this a couple times. There's a couple games that we didn't even make picks on because the lines moved, but I did send out a note to people on Discord. I picked out like 15 games, and I was like, folks, these are the things. This was on Sunday. I was like, these are the numbers I think you should go get now. I think 2 of them moved the other direction by half a point, not our key numbers. I think 2 of them stayed the exact same. I think the other 11 all moved the way I said. This is one where I sent out to the Discord on Sunday afternoon. I said, there's a 13. Go grab the 13, people. It's 13.5 now. I don't really see why this doesn't climb over 14 as people kind of realize what's happening here. I do think there will be some sharp money on Temple at the end under the paradigm. But remember, there were all those years when all the sharps were putting money on the Browns and the Jets, and they were mostly getting crushed. But it was like they were just going to do what they were going to do, right? They were going to play the big dogs. And I think that's the only way you can talk yourself into Temple because this Army team is pretty solid. Folks, if so, we're going to 13.5 an A grade here, A plus from us. If you want some fun reading, go back now. I mean, we're still in September, folks. This is not like revisionist history hindsight. We're 4 games into the season, 4 weeks into the season. Go back and read some American Athletic Conference predictions, some previews, and they've got Army, Navy, almost all of them in the like 5 to 10 range. Nobody is talking about them at all to win the conference. Everything is about Memphis, UTSA, Tulane, all these teams. And I don't know what the odds you could have got on Navy Army preseason, but it was for sure going to be better than plus 1,000, maybe even higher than that.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how we haven't even come that far. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, when you start looking forward, it's not impossible. It's not that we think it will happen necessarily. It's just, it is on the table that we have a very surprising American Athletic Conference championship game. That's Thursday. There are 2 Friday games. Virginia Tech and Miami looks to be priced pretty well as of right now. We're talking about Washington, Rutgers. The first thing I want to talk about here, because Jared, is that this is a Big Ten game. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about this. Like, if you went back 20 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever, when we were, in high school and college and we were playing NCAA college football, back when Rutgers was in the Big East.
The Big East, yeah.
And you had Rutgers in the Big East and Washington, of course, in the Pac, I guess at the time, 10. How many guesses would you have needed to say in the year of our Lord 2024, this is a conference game, and what conference is it in? I feel like we would have needed at least a dozen guesses before we said Big Ten.
I never would have considered that Washington could be part of the Big Ten. Would have never crossed my mind.
this is a brutal game to travel literally across the country from literal one coast to the other. I mean, Washington is in Seattle, plays on the water. Rutgers is in New Jersey on the coast. Like this is on a Friday night. I mean,
that's the thing that gets me. The Friday night. I mean,
Friday night. Just take the kids out of school for one more day. Who cares? This isn't about school anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it never was, to be honest. This is just a bonkers game. But that aside, really rough travel spot for Washington. We're on Rutgers here. Model says they win 60% of the time. That ekes Rutgers minus 135 into a B grade play. Even though the model doesn't love it, I really like it. I don't think Washington's bad at all. I just think you've seen Washington already play a 50-50 game with Washington State. I mean, Rutgers is probably better than Washington State, and the travel, again, is a big deal on this one. Like, the model says 60%. I kind of think it might be more like 65% for Rutgers. I really like them in this spot. Their defense has played really well. The best unit on the field is Rutgers defense. So that at home with this travel, B grade, minus 135 for Rutgers. Because Jared, tell us more.
Yeah, so the travel, definitely a big part of it. Washington's first game outside of the state. So really, their first road trip of the season. If this is a player-based model, so I have the ability to see the grades for each player, top to bottom.
You do, viewer, you do not. Maybe one day.
Top to bottom, Rutgers, same if not better offensive line in Washington. Top to bottom defense, Rutgers, better defense than Washington. The cross-country travel, and this is in no way an indictment of Washington. They have had a grand total of 4 games with their new coach now. But Rutgers has a culture. They have an identity. They know what they are. Washington, again, not anything against them, but in game 4, they're still figuring it out. And the offense hasn't been great. Like, you think Will Rogers, you think throw it around, when he was at Mississippi State, but that's not the offense that he's in right now.
That was the Mike Leach offense.
Yes. There's just going to be some growing pains with Washington, and the team that, aside from like we talked about at the top of the show, the top level of the Big Ten. Obviously, you don't want to be playing those schools, but if there's like another school from that next level that you don't want to play on a short week across the country, it's Rutgers, because they're going to hit you in the mouth over and over again. I'm going to butcher his name, but Montague, I don't know. It's not Romeo and Juliet, but it's a very similar name. Monagai, the running back for Rutgers, excellent running back. Washington is going to get a heavy dose of him. One thing to reiterate what you said, though, money line here, Rutgers games can get Rutgersy, as was evident during that West Virginia game, that they were thoroughly in control the entire game. Virginia Tech, excuse me, where they were thoroughly in control and then decided with like 10 minutes left, let's make this interesting. So definitely one that I'm willing to pay a small premium there to take them on the money line, as opposed to laying as of right now, 2.5 points.
Could get off schedule because they might decide to convince the other team's quarterback to launch the ball out of the end. Yeah. And I need like a friggin' rocket launcher. I mean, that ball
was impressive. It was like a
Yeah. Did that get out of the stadium? Like, I needed to see the follow-up of where that ball went. I don't think I ever saw it.
Yeah.
It was a good one. So you could get off the schedule of 3s and 7s in that game too.
And we're not going to go in depth on it here, but if you're eyeing a total on this game too, also like the under here, sideline gives like basically no edge to it. I think sideline says like 45.5, 46 points, lines 45. 46 maybe.
Other way around, models is 45, lines 46. Yeah,
okay, I still like the under here. Like I said, tough travel spot for Washington. Rutgers wants to play a very specific type of game. Washington's offense has not been able to get going against any decent team this year. So if you were looking for more of a total, I prefer Rutgers, on the money line. Here's my favorite pick, but second favorite pick under the 46.
Yeah, I'm with you there. As long as you're at least getting 45.5 to get 45 in there is a key number. Of course, key numbers may not matter with Rutgers, but that's not a bad way to look. I think we talk a lot about Rutgers in college basketball and college football having a decent little home field advantage relative to what they should have, right? Punching above their weight, right? We know that, Ohio State in football has got a big home field advantage, right? We know that Kentucky in basketball has got a big home court advantage, right? It does. But like Rutgers being a much smaller, not as good, program, but typically can have a decent little home field for that. And I think on a Friday night, like you said, it's all the ingredients together for us here. It's a short number minus 135. Be great on Rutgers. Moving into Saturday, Big 12 action, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Because we can talk about every Big 12 game this week, but other than one, which we will cover, a lot of the story is the same. It's what we've said all year. Who in the world is good in the Big 12? A lot of it has to.
If we would love for you to share with us.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. That's a typo on the screen, folks. Oklahoma State does not win 4% of the time according to the model. It's 44% of the time. I have it default to the favorite, and then I was like, no, I'm just going to change that and type Oklahoma State. And when I did that, the complement of 56 is 44, and I only typed 14. Yeah. Oklahoma State wins this 44% of the time. We're going to take OSU on the money line plus 190 against Kansas State. First off, Kansas State is not as bad as that BYU score looked. That was fluky. Kansas State had them outgained through most of the game. I don't know if it finished that way. There was a couple of weird plays, that weird punt return thing that the BYU had. Provo's a tough place to play. Manhattan's a tough place to play.
Yep.
But really, this is mostly about, I have no idea. It all happened.
Yeah.
So plus 190 is way too good to pass up. Because Jared, what are your thoughts?
Very, very similar. The reason why I like the money line as opposed to taking the points is that I just think Kansas State coming off a loss, it's they could win this game by 14 points, and it wouldn't surprise me. But just the theme of the Big 12. Nobody is as bad as their last loss. Nobody is as good as their last win. Like, all of these teams are so close together. And the past 2 weeks, we had Memphis plus 200-ish, something like that 2 weeks ago. We had Michigan last week. This is definitely the play this week where it's longer odds, but it's maybe a little bit less of a coin flip game than the last two, but still close enough, where Avery Johnson just doesn't get it going for whatever reason, has a turnover. Oklahoma State can, put up a lot of points in a hurry. So I like this play. This is a straight value play. Again, it's possible Kansas State comes out, fired up after that embarrassment at BYU. They're the type of team that could do that. But plus 190 is just way, way, way too much for a game that's much closer to a coin flip.
And the same thing, it could be the Oklahoma State comes up fired up after that embarrassing home loss to Utah, where they did fight and come back at the end and make it a game, but that was over at some point. The thing I like about this matchup specifically, Cousin Jared, you know a lot about the Big 12. I know a lot about the Big 12. We talk about specific matchups or whatever. This game has a penchant for being drunk. Oklahoma State, Kansas State. It's been some of the wonkiest games in the Big 12, and that's when I love plus 190. Additionally, and this is, I can say this because I know he's not going to watch this show, but good friend of the show, Jack, who was on some of the football shows in year one, back when we started this a long, long time ago. We did some 3-man weave shows. Is an Oklahoma State fan, and he is back in the country after a couple years trip abroad for some work stuff, and he was over watching some football here at the house last week, and we watched the end of the Oklahoma State game. And I've seen Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy. The teams are either really good, they've had some really good teams, or they're teams that really just toy with Oklahoma State's fan base, their emotions. They look terrible, and the fans are like, I'm out. This team's terrible. And then they have like a great win, and then they'll be terrible again. Like, they're just all over the map because Gundy's a good motivator and a good coach. He's got some good players always. And they said they're either like good, like they'll make the conference championship game or be in the running for it, or a 10-win season or whatever, or when they're not, you just never know what you're going to get. Again, I love the plus 190 if I don't know what I'm going to get from them, because that's the whole point, is this, they can absolutely punch way above their class, play way over their heads, and we can win. It's like you said, we've had a couple of these big plus dogs win for us here as of late, and it's the same sort of thing. We don't know what's going to happen in this one game, but we keep doing it over and over again, and we're going to win enough of them to be profitable. So
what would it take to get Jack on a show? I mean, I would invest heavily to get him on a show for a week.
We'll have to reach out to his agent, and we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see what she says. I think his agent's probably like yours and mine is probably the missus.
We'll
see how that goes. Yeah. Liberty and App State. We hesitated even to talk about this game because we've talked kind of a lot about both these schools. I want to talk about Liberty. Liberty here, thankfully, coming through with a massive comeback win. We laid the 7 with them last week. The line got up to 7.5, and I was like, ooh, like that extra half point might matter. It turned out to not matter because it kind of got off schedule. But, I was counting it up as a loss. I was like, hey, even if Liberty loses, we're still going to have a double-digit plus unit week. It's great. And I went to bed and woke up, and they'd come back from down 17.
Yeah.
And not only won, but covered. This Liberty team is kind of crazy. I think the biggest issue here is App State's defense is just atrocious. And that's the biggest problem here. I don't know if they're going to stop Liberty. According to the model, they went 72% of the time. We are going to take Liberty minus 165 on the spread. It's 3.5. We don't really love laying 3.5 as a rule, but this is, I believe, another one. Cousin Jared, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Another one I think I sent out to the Discord. I said Liberty -3. Go ahead and grab it. Of course, now it's at 3.5. So -3. Whew, if you were able to get that with us over on Discord, that's great. If not, at this point, we'd rather pay a little bit of the premium on the money line just in case they win by a field goal. What are your thoughts?
I'm hoping that second half Liberty had last week was their get right half, kind of get back on track from what we've seen the first part of the season here. App State, my goodness, what South Alabama did. Shout out to Major Applewhite, NCAA 2002, or maybe Game Breaker 2000. I don't even know. I didn't know if it was, Chris Sims had higher throw power, but Major Applewhite had higher throw accuracy. So that was always tough. When you were trying to hit Roy Williams deep, you wanted Chris Sims. But if you were hitting Bo Scaife underneath, I
don't think it was. They had a second receiver. I can't remember who it was. BJ Johnson, maybe I'm making that up.
BJ Johnson was number 82.
With the route to the
Lima Swede. Now that was after that. Anyway, okay. App State. So here's the thing. Usually those numbers you're used to seeing for App State, their offense is usually number 45, and their defense is usually number 65 or 70, and that is significant when you're talking about the dominance that they've kind of had, or how great they've been playing at that level. When you're, in the top 50 with that level of competition, you're doing something. You really lose a lot of that umph when you get outside of the top 50 on offense. And the defense now, just absolutely nothing to write home about. I can't remember a game in recent memory where that App State South Alabama game, and after a quarter and a half, you were like, App State doesn't have a chance in this game. No. All of the past handful of years, it's always been App State could win low scoring games. App State could win shootouts. They could kind of do whatever they needed to do. And I just don't think they could do that this year. And Liberty, still that offense of Jamie Chadwell, I just don't think App State's going to get that many stops in this game is kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we talked about this a couple times on the show. We talked about before the season started. One of the reasons I like Texas State and the Sun Belt was just it seems like so many of these previously really good Sun Belt teams were taking a step back this year. Lost a coach, lost a quarterback, lost a bunch of players, and you're kind of seeing it with some of these teams like App State really kind of falling backwards. A little bit of an interesting non-conference game here, so we're mostly into the conference schedule, but of course, two teams that are located not too far from each other. So at least it's not a cross-country non-conference game like there is, I think, one random cross-country non-conference game that I saw that I was like, what is happening here? So at least it's teams that are close. We're going to take Liberty on the money line, A grade there. We're also going to take Louisiana on the money line. I like this Louisiana team. I've been high on them. We haven't had a chance to talk about them or Wake Forest this year. So it's kind of nice to throw in some teams that we haven't mentioned anything about. The Louisiana offense is really good. Their defense is terrible. Wake Forest, like, do they have an identity this year? It's kind of interesting. Usually they've got like this really great offense. They're still playing fast, but they've got like a great offense and a terrible defense or something kind of to hang their hat on. This year, they're kind of just ho-hum across the board. We think Louisiana is the better team on the road, makes this a coin toss game. So plus 130 gets into the A grade threshold, the A grade threshold according to the model right now, plus 123. Again, you get that information for every single game over on Dub Club. So A plus from us here. What are your thoughts on these two teams that, again, we haven't talked about all season?
I think this game feels very similar to me to the game that Louisiana played last week, where it was Louisiana played Tulane. That was a one-score game. I think Tulane's probably a little bit better than Wake Forest is, but this one's on the road, so you kind of got that. I think this is going to be a close game, as evidenced by Sideline saying 50%. Why are we getting plus 130? I think this is all because of the names that are here. Dave Clawson, the head coach there at Wake Forest, love the offense, love the slow mesh. It seems like it's just plug and play. For the love of everything that's good, he got the best. He's getting seemingly the best out of Hank Bachmeier that any coach has been able to get at a couple of stops now. But again, this just feels like a toss-up game, and this has been our bread and butter for the past year and a half at this point. Just take these games where it's the wrong team favored or the odds are skewed in one direction when it's a toss-up game. Give me Louisiana money line. Love it.
San Diego State Central Michigan was the game that I was like, this is a random non-conference game for going across the country. Literally every time's in a part. We do have an A-grade pick on that one too. We're not going to cover here, but I think that's what I want to reemphasize. What you just said is, I think it's about the names, about the school names on the front of the jersey, right? And I think that's where we're getting some good value here. This should be, minus 110 aside, or minus 105, minus 115, something in that ballpark. But we're getting an extra, 40 cents of value here probably because of the names. People just don't realize that Louisiana's solid. I mean, they're not amazing, but they're definitely solid. And Wake Forest is just kind of mediocre. So take it in that one. UMass and Miami, Ohio. Whatever. I don't know. Why are we talking about this? Because Jared, you were just putting the flag down, being like, this is our game right here.
Yeah. So I mean, it's about time that we have a Miami, Ohio under, right? Like, we tried to get too cute the first week of the season when they were playing Northwestern, and we said, oh yeah, we want to take the 3 points with Miami, Ohio,
which almost won, by the way. Was one terrible decision away from winning, because they should have gone for the 4th and 1 or whatever it was rather than kick the field goal. But
we digress all the time. But that game ended up being 13-6. Miami, Ohio has not scored more than 16 points in a game this season. Small sample size, only 3 games so far. But seemingly as more offensively challenged than what they have been in the past. But the defense still playing good. I mean, they gave up 13 to Northwestern. They gave up 27 to Cincinnati, 28 to Notre Dame. But again, when the offense is doing so little and possessing the ball for such a short amount of time, like, the defense is really holding their own, as evidenced by the number 51 rating that you see there. Again, I'll go back to what I just said about App State. When you're playing, this level of competition, 51, pretty good. And unfortunately, UMass is still UMass, and we have saved ourselves. You have specifically saved me from backing UMass in at least one game this year. And so I do appreciate you stopping me from doing that, because UMass, while not the very bottom of the barrel, still very, very close
to the
bottom of the barrel. So
Kent State is their own class.
Yes.
So
they are in a class by themselves.
Yes, not in a good way.
No. Again, another one that was beneficial. If you were with us on Dub Club, you could have got this at 48 whenever it first opened. So again,
now it's 46.5 is the official.
Now it's 46.5. Doesn't matter. I still love it. Definitely, probably down to 44. I would still play this one. But the benefits of being Dub Club is great. But I just think there's going to be very few points in this game. If this game had 27 points, I'd be like, yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah, or I'm like, into the 30s, sure, but into the 40s is tall task for these teams. We're going to go under, and that one also an 8 grade play. 8 grade play also on Colorado. We're going to take 14 points at UCF. Model says UCF wins by an average of 9.4. You could argue that, and this is where, again, the model gets better every week. Or not every week necessarily. Some weeks I don't make any updates, but I do try to improve something in the model during, all the time. Every season it gets better. There is a home field advantage component, but there isn't really a distance traveled component. That's part of the reason why we liked Rutgers more than the model, because that hasn't mattered up until kind of recently when the conferences have gotten even more spread out. But now this year, that's starting to really matter with Cal, Stanford, of course, playing all these games on the literal East Coast, which is crazy. All the Pac-12 stuff. Now the Big 12's expanded their footprint even more than just it was the one random, BYU and UCF and West Virginia. Now it's even more of them. You can make a case that the model should incorporate that it's something that I will build in eventually, and that this should really be more like 10 and a half or whatever. But 14 still seems like a lot of points. So we're going to take the 14 with Colorado here. Is Colorado good? No. Do they have enough components to hang around in games? Yes. Can they get blown out? Yes. They got blown out by Nebraska. I think we're getting some value here because I think people are using a little bit too much of the transitive property. I think they're kind of looking at, well, Illinois just beat Nebraska and Nebraska crushed Colorado. And they're kind of thinking about, I don't think we can really do that. I think we need to look at the whole picture and not this team beat this team, this team beat this team. UCF's a good team, absolutely. And I think KJ Jefferson's going to be able to do to Colorado a little bit more than what Baylor was able to do offensively. But I don't think UCF's defense is good enough to really stop Colorado. I think Colorado is going to be able to score some points. 14 is just a lot of points here. So we're going to take the dog. What is your take, Cousin Jared?
So Colorado lost 8 games last season. How many of those 8 games would they have not covered 14?
For sure the Oregon game.
The Oregon game. And
I'm not sure. Maybe one other one?
There's only one other game they played last season, Washington State, at the end of November when injuries really started piling up for Colorado.
And they had no depth last year. And they don't really have a lot of depth this year, but that's all.
Yeah. But this game's being played on, September 27th or whatever it is, September 28th, not November 17th, like that Washington State game last year. So I think that we are having selective memory on how bad. I mean, the back half of Colorado seasons last year was not good, but it was not losing every game by 3 touchdowns bad. It was losing some close games and having a lot of backdoor covers, which, hey, I would be ecstatic with in this game. The other thing is when you go back and look at some of those losses they had last year in the back half of that Pac-12 schedule, UCLA had an amazing defense last year. Colorado covered that game. Oregon State had a good defensive front last year. They covered that game. If UCF, we always like to talk about how our plays win, but how does this play lose? You're telling me that UCF has a defensive front that is of the same caliber as Nebraska. And because that was really the difference in the game. Like Shadur Sanders, he's always running for his life, but in that Nebraska game,
he was super running for his life in that game.
Yes. Like it was like snap the ball, immediately have to take off.
Yeah.
I don't have it up right in front of me, but Nebraska's defensive grade very, very low, which is good. It is beyond the 93, which is 40th overall that UCF has here. Like this is a completely different type of team. And I don't know if people are thinking
Nebraska's a 68.
Yeah. Nebraska's a 68 on defense and UCF is a 93. They are not in the same realm here. Okay. So can Colorado lose this game? Absolutely. Can Colorado lose this game by double digits? Absolutely. But I think there are plenty of opportunities for backdoor covers here. Honestly, I think this is going to be closer than maybe even the 10 points that Sideline's projecting here. Colorado just has a way of hanging in every game. They're going to give up a lot of points, but they're going to score a lot of points. I can definitely see some fireworks in this one, but I think it's going to be close late.
And I think what people are missing, and gosh, as a Baylor alum and fan, I really hate talking about the stupidity from Saturday.
Yeah.
And the way that ended. which was just insane on so many levels. The back-to-back Hail Marys that should have never been because the first one should have worked, and then fumbling out of the end zone as you're at like that inch line or whatever. But I think here's the thing people are like missing about that is they're like, oh, well, Colorado barely beat Baylor at home. Baylor's not that good. Yeah, I don't think Baylor's that good either. Absolutely. But Baylor was only ahead in that game because of 2, maybe even 3 really good special teams plays. Like, if it wasn't for the return game, Colorado doesn't need the Hail Mary. They just win that game. And they cover easily. And so I don't know. I think people are getting a little bit hung up on needing the Hail Mary and needing overtime and how that played out. And, maybe UCF does the same thing because, again, Colorado isn't deep. So they are a little more susceptible to special teams plays because that's where one of your areas, your depth shows up in special teams from the start. And it shows up in the regular teams when you have injuries later in the season and everybody's worn out. But that was the thing that part of the reason that it's so frustrating that Baylor gave that game away is because they got those special teams plays and they still couldn't hold on. And that's also a little bit of credit to Colorado for they gave up those special team plays and still fought back and put themselves in a position to win the game. And, UCF's a better team, but, you take those away and I think this becomes, again, like I said, much more of a closer, evenly matched contest. Give UCF a slight edge, but it's not like they're 20 points better.
Yep.
Moving on to another Big 12 game, TCU and Kansas. We take a lot of dogs in the Big 12. We're going to take the favorite here. We're going to take Kansas -2.5. I mean, really, we can do short and simple on this one. To me, this is just about we faded. The model faded TCU last week, like SMU. We loved the over last week in that game. TCU's defense is just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it. And I don't know. I mean, Kansas is in a really tough spot this season, starting 1-3. And again, we mentioned this would happen in the Big 12. For Kansas, it's really unfortunate that a couple of those losses are non-conference losses rather than conference ones. But, what better way to right the ship than at home against a team that doesn't have a defense? So we're related 2.5 for Kansas. Model says they win by an average of about 7. What are your thoughts, Cousin Jared?
Yeah, this to me feels just like the TCU Kansas game from about 2 years ago. I think when TCU went to the national championship game, and that was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Who's going to get a stop first? That day it was TCU. I think on Saturday it's going to be Kansas, just because TCU's defense is a sieve, more or less. They can't stop anybody, and I thought. The first half of the UCF game 2 weeks ago, you thought, oh, hey, like maybe TCU can do enough defensively. And then that was quickly put to bed the second half of that UCF game. And, of course, the SMU game playing out like it did, which easy over winner on that one. I think we had 2 overs that we won before halftime last week. So
probably the North Texas one, probably the one it was.
No, it was North Carolina and James Madison.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I think that it was the third quarter for the North Texas game. Anyway, there's going to be lots of points in this game. I think Kansas gets a stop before TCU. The other thing is, I mean, don't get me wrong, Sonny Dykes, good coach, but Lance Leipold, like this is where this is where, in my opinion, Lance Leipold makes his money, because a good coach like Lance Leipold at Kansas is one that can stop the bleeding. Whereas a lot of the other coaches that Kansas have had, even when they've had semi-successful seasons, they just have not been able to stop the bleeding once it starts going. I think Lance Leipold can staunch that for a week here against TCU at home.
Of note, Kansas, according to the model, grades out at a 96 on defense. SMU grades out at a 94. So not really that different. And TCU put up some points on SMU, and TCU will put up some points on Kansas, but also SMU was not stopped hardly at all. And they got a handful of stops, and that'll be kind of the same thing that we think here. SMU on offense, an identical 115. These two teams are next to each other. So I mean, this is a very similar rematch here for TCU, except now it's in a travel spot here rather than I think the game was at SMU, but that was traveling, across the city, not across multiple state lines.
Yeah.
And so this game also is being played at Arrowhead because of the renovations that are being done to the Kansas Stadium. So we are actually giving Kansas a smaller home field edge in the model. We're cutting it in half. Obviously, there will be a lot of Kansas fans, but there is something to be said about the extra travel, staying in a different hotel now based off of how you normally do your home stuff, your routines, your locker room, all those other fun things just kind of adds up a little bit. So cutting back a little bit on the home field edge, and still think Kansas should win this one handily. So we're going to like the 2.5 with them. The grade for this one, also an A. I think we got mostly A grade picks again on show. Maybe one B grade later. Fresno State and UNLV. We're going to go over 52. Key number here in the 50s. Probably 52, maybe 51, but really 52. We need 51. That's a lot of field goals to have to get to 51. So 52 is probably your fairly key number. I'm not sure how many field goals this game is going to have based off of these offenses. The offenses are just clearly better than the defenses. It's not really about pace. It's just these offenses are going to score. We laid the points last week at Fresno State just because I've seen them now enough in late games, which is fun to watch, and they're gonna they're gonna put up points. We've seen UNLV put up the points.
Yeah, Fresno State keeps their foot on the gas too. Had a cover within like the last 3 minutes of the game. Against New Mexico last week. So yeah, they just like to keep going.
The late field goal, which is great.
yeah. UNLV. Okay, so clearly, like viewer, I have a large hand in producing this show, so this is also a pick that I like. But I will admit that UNLV, while they grade out perfectly well on offense, they have not really been put in the situation where they had to do anything offensively this year. They have had a couple of very unique games against Houston, the first game of the season, where they literally almost could have done nothing in that game and still won. Houston this year seemingly is just going to drag every game into an ugly rock fight. And then same thing
except for Rice.
Except for Rice. And then they had the kind of weird game against Kansas where, again, by circumstances, Friday night game, they got up and they just kind of had to hang on. They didn't have to really attack. I don't think that's going to be the case with Fresno State. I think Fresno State's going to put up points. I think UNLV is going to kind of have to let the dogs go as far as they will on offense. Like I don't think they're going to be able to get ahead and run out the clock and kind of do the things they've got to do the first couple of weeks of the season where they didn't have this pressure to score. I think Fresno State is going to put that pressure on them, and you're going to be able to see UNLV's offense open up like they haven't done so far, or haven't had to do so far this season. So this was definitely one of the lines, and I understand the projection's only 57 points, but this was sometimes with totals, it's hard to just eyeball them and see which one's off. This was one where I was like, this feels off.
Yeah, I don't really know why this is at 52. I know the type of game that UNLV's played so far, but again, the Houston one, I think you really just throw out the window. The Kansas one is concerning. If this plays out just like the Kansas game, then it's almost like we need to reset our expectations. But I'm going to give that one a pass because also the fact that it was a non-conference game, it was a road game. It wasn't really a game that I'm sure that UNLV really was like needing to win. Like it does help their playoff chances, absolutely, that they won that game. But you know what's going to help their playoff chances more? Winning the conference. Like that's the biggest thing. If they win the Mountain West, they're going to be in the running for that playoff bid, and that's their goal for the season. And so I also wonder how much of that so far early on has been a little bit of vanilla game planning, not wanting to do too much. They've also got a new quarterback, now that conference is starting, now it's, now we really need, like you said, let the dogs eat kind of thing. Let the horses out of the barn, whatever phrase you want to use there. I guess that's all animal related. I hope Pete is not mad at us. And really kick it up a notch. And like I said, Fresno State just go with their offense. It's really good. And so, expecting a lot of points. I'm like you. I think this should be, if this total was set at 62, I would be like, the model doesn't like that many points. I'm interested in this. I want to keep an eye on it, but I'm not comfortable going under that number. And that I think tells you a lot, that I wouldn't go under that. I'm not saying I'd go over it, but I wouldn't go under it either. So over 52 here. In that one, A grade pick. North Carolina Duke, another A grade. And the reason we wanted to talk about this one specifically, number's 55.5. And we don't often go over on the wrong side of a key number, but occasionally we do. And we try to tell you there's times when don't get caught up on the key number because the next key number up, or sometimes the one after that, is actually the one that matters. We said the same thing last week with UNT and Wyoming. And that doesn't mean this will be the same thing, right? You do not know, right? One game is unpredictable. So I'm not trying to say put all your money on this because if the same thing's going to happen. Do not hear that, listener. What I'm saying is this is another similar situation where just like that one, I don't really think the fact that it's on the wrong side of this key number matters. Really, the key numbers that would matter in this game are 58, 59. According to the model, I'm kind of thinking the key numbers that might matter really are more in the 60s with this one because I just don't see North Carolina playing a game anywhere near this number of points after what we saw last week. They clearly still have the ability to score. They clearly don't have an offense and just are throwing caution to the wind and just saying F it.
Yeah.
Both of these teams are playing with a pretty decent pace. Surprising for Duke. I think people are thinking about Duke and old school Duke and like that Northwestern game. But again, remember, they played that Northwestern game in a night game on Lake Michigan.
On the lake. Yeah, on the lake. Yeah.
And not like a small lake. Lake Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throw that one out, right? And so we're going to go over 55.5. Tell us more, Cousin.
North Carolina, it's to me, this is the defense is just every other defense that Mac Brown has had in his time at North Carolina, which is just not very good, unfortunately. And I have come to realize, or at least my working hypothesis, is that the best defense that North Carolina has is when they have a really good quarterback like Sam Howell or Drake May, who is just uber efficient, keeps the sticks moving, possesses the ball, keeps it away from the team. And those North Carolina teams go fast, but still you have to be highly efficient and basically just either score every time you have the ball and keep the ball out of the other team's hands. Like that's how North Carolina, when they have
Max Johnson might have been that.
Maybe. Could have been.
Yeah. It started off in that first game looking like that, where he had a lot of short completions. And it was a lot of long drives, a lot of running the ball, a lot of short drives, little short passes. And then now that's out the window.
Yeah, and now it's you gotta change it up. You gotta try to hit some home runs. You have a more mobile QB. You move him around more. He breaks some runs. You haven't necessarily lost the explosiveness, but you're not always possessing the ball as much time and giving your defense more of a break. And unfortunately, like I said, the defense is the exact same. On the flip side, like Malik Murphy, of course, transferring from Texas, still like what he's done so far this year. The pace for both of these teams is
same sort of high. Thing. Can make some explosive plays.
Yeah. And so I said perfectly. I am the number one person that says wait for key numbers. 55 is not the key number here. It's 58, 59, 61, 62, something like that.
83.
Yeah, could be.
Looking at the box score of that North Carolina James Madison game is just insane.
Yes.
Jacoby Criswell.
You would have barely gone under 83 in the first half.
Jacoby Criswell, his line alone of 28 completions, 20 incompletions, 475 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. It's just, and they were playing from behind for them. They may be playing from behind on this one too. So I don't know if it'll be quite that drunk, but this should be a fun game.
It has the potential to be, though.
Has the potential to be, and if any team gets up, I don't think either team is going to let their foot off the gas. Rivalry game. Duke's the little brother. North Carolina's wounded this year. I really feel like if either team gets up, they're just going to keep trying to score and say, hey, it's been working. Let's just keep doing it. So A-grade play for us here over 55.5. To the night game, the game of the week, one of the games of the year, although I would be remiss if I did not point out that in Sideline, the top 5 teams are all within 1 point of each other, and 4 of those teams reside in the SEC. So there's going to be a lot of really big games. This is one of them. We're going to take Alabama at plus 110. I don't understand this line. I mean, I guess I do. I get that Georgia's really good. But I think that people's perception of Georgia is that they're the Georgia from last year or even more so 2-3 years ago. This Georgia team's just not quite as good. We've talked about that. They are really good. Don't get me wrong. The fact that they're 5th right now in that top 5 is rounding error. They're all basically really good. But that's the difference, is that in years past, Georgia's been like clearly better than that 2nd and 3rd or 4th best team. And this year they're in that pack. And I think that's accurate. Their defense is not, insanely good like it's been a couple times. Their offense hasn't quite done what we thought it would do, especially in that Kentucky game where we saw they just did not do anything. The first half of Clemson, they didn't really do much. Again, they're a really good team, but they're not that Death Star type team that we've seen before. Alabama, kind of the same thing. Maybe they're not quite as good as some of those teams that they've had in the past, but they're still a really good team. Well, you put two really good teams together. Why am I getting plus 110 with a home team? I think it's perception of Georgia's the new hip thing and Alabama's, the old boring thing. But model says they win 58% of the time, largely on the home field, because otherwise this is a pretty even matchup. Plus odds for the home team and what would be a toss-up on a neutral field is just way too good to pass up. One of my favorite plays of the week here at plus 110. Rarely do we have a play this good on one of the top games. So it's sometimes fun when that happens. This is one of those rare cases.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How excited I was that we actually had an edge on this game, because
usually the biggest game is like
sharpest lines usually for the biggest games, but not so on this one. I look at this game, and if you would have, just not told me what year it was, and you put Alabama up here and said they had a number 3 offense, the number 7 defense, number 4 overall, I'd be like, okay, so any other Alabama team, like very, very similar. Okay, maybe flip those. Under Nick Saban, maybe it would have been the number 3 defense. And
there was a couple years with Hurts or Tua or whatever where it might have been 3 and 7, but more times than not, it was 7 and 3.
But number 4 overall, number 3 overall, number 5, it's just very similar to what Alabama has always been. And even when we had those better Georgia teams, and I completely understand that it was Nick Saban, I get it, all credit to Coach Saban. But Alabama still won those games, at least 50% of the time, or not more. Just in every possible way, this seems like a complete toss-up. And again, it's been our bread and butter. Just take the team with plus odds when it's a toss-up game, and especially Alabama at home. I don't get it. This feels like a pick 'em to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it is that simple. Also, credit to Coach Saban for the Verbo commercial, folks. If you've not seen the Verbo commercial, pause this.
I've seen it on mute. I haven't listened to it.
Oh, it's so good. His he deadpans at this. It starts off strong when the family comes up to the house, and the tone that he uses. I don't want to ruin it for people. I don't want to spoil it, but to answer the question, the tone. Oh my gosh, he nails it. It's fantastic. It's well worth a watch.
Okay.
The last thing I want to say about this one, a lot of times, especially with dogs, we see that maybe there's no rush. But in general, we always see people go get the picks when we make them, because most of the time it goes towards what we're doing. Not always. There are some random occasions where it doesn't, but more times than not it does. This is one for sure where I don't know what the numbers are going to do, because I don't know exactly how the money's going to come in, right? I don't, but I do know I kind of have my ear to the ground a little bit in some of these spaces, and I know there are some pretty big groups out there who are lower on Georgia than we are. And so there is going to be some big Alabama money coming in at some point. I can tell you that, people. Now, does that mean there won't be some big Georgia money coming in too? I don't know that necessarily. That is possible. And I don't know when the Alabama money is going to come in. But to me, I don't really think there's any need to try to get greedy and take something better than plus 110. I think plus 110 is really good. I think just take that and run with it, because at some point, maybe Alabama gets a little bit higher, and that's when the Alabama money comes in. But I think it's going to come in at some point, because I know there's some perceptions for some really sharp groups, big money groups that are not sold on the Georgia defense whatsoever, and the specific weaknesses that they think Alabama, and again, a really smart head coach in Kalen DeBoer can exploit. So I do think that at some point that Alabama money is coming in. So plus 110, I think lock it in as fast as you can. Also, I had another, I guess, big game, but it's really going to be overshadowed. Ohio State, Michigan State, a game that's, been a little bit disappointing for the last several years as Michigan State has taken a step back. Again, it used to be, I guess, a bigger game. Michigan State, still trying to get back to prominence, now with hiring, I think, a very good head coach. They're not there yet. They're obviously going to take some time to get there. But even early on, that defense does look pretty strong. The issue is going to be the offense. Aiden Childs has been meh at best. I know he was highly regarded, and they really thought more of him. It hasn't really come to fruition. The model thinks this Ohio State defense is absolutely legit. We're going to go under 49 in this one, as the model says 38.7. Because Jared, what is your take on this one?
Well, and I'm looking, this is as good as live TV, people. So I'm trying to look for a tweet right now because I want to make sure that I'm reading it right thing. But it was Chris Vanini of the Athletic, and he tweeted at some point this past weekend talking about Aiden Childs and Mississippi State. He basically says something to the effect of like, the Aiden Childs experience is something, and this watching Aiden Childs is an experience. This has multiple meanings, and I could not have said it better myself. That he can make the best plays. It's oh my god, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh yes, and then oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, why did you do that? And so you get kind of the run of everything there. The problem is Ohio State's defense is a 57, and I think there's going to be a lot more of oh no, oh no, oh no, why did you do that, as opposed to oh no, oh no, oh yes. I just don't think that Michigan State's going to score that many points in this one. I think Jonathan Smith team, like they've done at Oregon State, like seemingly is just like part of the culture at Michigan State as well, finding ways to ugly games up. So maybe they can do that a little bit, but does that mean that Ohio State wins this game 35-10? Like, I don't know. Like, I just think that this is going to be, no matter how you cut it, a really low scoring game. If Michigan State hangs in it, it's going to be low scoring. If Ohio State blows them out, Michigan State may not have that many points. Like, I just think there's a lot of ways this game stays under.
Yeah, 49 is insanely high for this game. It makes really no sense to me. I'm still not really sold on Will Howard as a team, as a quarterbacking a team that's one of the top teams in the country, and obviously they're really good everywhere else, which helps. But a lot of our faith in this under, in my opinion, is as you said, Jonathan Smith. It is the fact that we've seen him at Oregon State, very, be very, very tactic oriented with regards to what is the best way to hang in this game. We talk about this a lot, that there's teams who, try to go fast, and all of a sudden they're going fast in a blowout situation, and it's like, think that backfired on you. Like, did you really mean to do that, right? And he's not one to do that. He will, in certain situations, depending on the other team's weakness, try to exploit that. But knowing Ohio State's defense and knowing that their best chance to win this is their defense can hang with Ohio State's offense and murk this up, muck it up and make it murky. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Words are hard. I do math. I'm like you. Like, there's a really good chance this game is like 13-10. There's a really good chance Michigan State, like I said, just doesn't score at all. And Ohio State gets a big special teams play or gets a couple of those turnovers and scores or whatever. And Ohio State wins this game 38-zip. But like 49, getting into the 50s is going to take multiple defensive touchdowns, multiple like special teams type plays, blocked punts, that sort of stuff, safeties, a bunch of weird things happening, if you like, a bunch of big plays. And I don't really think Michigan State is built for the big play. And I think both these defenses are more than capable of preventing the big play and saying, if you're going to score, it's going to take you a long march down the field. I don't see Michigan State doing that. I think Ohio State obviously is going to do it enough. They're probably going to win this game pretty handily, but it's a lot of points under 49 A grade. Every pick on the show, A grade today, except for the 1 B grade, which is Rutgers. We've got one more for you. Some late night action, only 3 after dark games, but folks, all 3 of them have entry: Washington State, Boise State, Arizona, and Utah, and then Oregon, UCLA. All of them interesting for one reason or another. Arizona and Utah, and Washington State, Boise State, more for the who's going to win by how much. This one is less about the who's going to win. I think we all know the answer. That's Oregon, UCLA. Not very good. The intrigue is going to come, we think, in the total. We're going to go under 55.5. The model projects 50. This one's just kind of I think you mentioned something about A grade totals just doing really well. We're on the right side of a key number. Oregon's got a pretty good defense. They're coming off a bye off of that Oregon State game. Their pace is below average. UCLA's pace is below average. UCLA, not the strongest defense, not as strong as last year, but I think that Indiana game was a little bit of, a sign of what their offense is going to do against a competent defense. I don't think it was a sign of what their defense is going to allow necessarily. I think Oregon's going to score some points, but I think Indiana goes at a faster pace than Oregon's wanting to do. This is on the road. I think this is, and Indiana's was too. That was just a heck of a victory. Mm-hmm. To me, if I'm Oregon coming off the bye, knowing all the conference games coming up, this is more of a get in, get the win, get out. And that's going to be, play it safe on offense. If you don't do anything stupid, you win this game. And 55.5, under that key number makes a lot of sense. We're going to go under. Cousin Jared, round us out here.
UCLA may score like 7 points in this game.
Maybe less.
Yeah, and to your point, Oregon is maybe at home. We have seen that Dan Lanning, think about that Colorado game last year, where Dan Lanning can, if he says that he wants to hang a number on you, he'll do it. I don't think Deshaun Foster and the UCLA Bruins, who are trying to get their wits about them, I don't think that's the team that Dan Lanning is going to necessarily stick the dogs on. Peter's really going to be bad now. I think it's going to be more of just to your point, we're up 31-0. Let's put in the backups, get them some run time. No reason to run up score. I just think that Oregon's got – we've talked about this all the time. It's always been about the money more than ever. This is a business. This is a business trip. Oregon, go in there, get your win, shut out UCLA, take it back to Oregon with a nice win, 35-0.
This game doesn't affect them whatsoever. If they win by a little or a lot, it won't change anything with regards to their playoff aspirations, their conference championship aspirations, playoff bye aspirations. It doesn't change anything. Just go get the win. It doesn't matter at all. There's no style points at this point, which is one we talk about the pros and the cons of the playoff, right? One of the benefits is this is not about style points for a lot of these games that we would have said before. Oh, they need to win big and prove ball. No, they just need to win. Who cares, right? There's not that same pressure. I know Oregon, like we said, they could put up some big numbers, but people forget. Last year they went into Utah and they won that game 35-6, and that's kind of what this feels like, the same sort of thing. Even last year against a USC team that had no defense and was playing games in the 80s, they won 36-27. Obviously that would have gone over this number, but that was USC, which was a whole different experience. They beat last year, they beat Oregon State 31-7. This year they put up 49 on Oregon State. That's a rivalry game. Boise State scored a lot of points off of them. That's because they have maybe the best running back in the country. And I just think there's a lot of they treated the Fiesta Bowl last year like a business trip. They won 45-6. And that would go under 55.5. And that's this could easily be 45-6. And I'd be like, sure, or it could be the 35-6. They're going to go in there, they're going to put some points. And then I think at the end of the game, it's going to be get the backups in, keep everybody healthy. No need to do anything crazy. UCLA, I think, is decent enough to stop the backups. I don't think they're going to stop the first very much.
Right.
And I don't think they're putting points. That offense at UCLA is terrible. They scored off UCLA, off LSU, who one of the weaker Power 4 defenses, but otherwise not very good. That's our picks. I think we got a nice little is that a baker's dozen? 13 of them, I think, for you here. We've got 14 other picks that we've already given out to Dub Club. We'll have more throughout the week. You can get trials on some of the packages. You can get some discounts for some longer term things. Again, the football only package, if that's all you're interested in. Otherwise, Cousin Jared, parting words to the viewer.
Join us on Dub Club. Got some of these plays at better numbers than what you got today. NFL still doing well. Like I said, best weekend of the season so far with college football. You got the baseball playoffs coming up. So all of those picks over on Dub Club. Now's a great time to join.
Baseball winning weeks, 3 of the last 4 weeks is a lot of fun. So
there you go.
That's finishing strong here after a little bit of a swoon there in August. It was a little bit late August, early September, a little bit frustrating, but kind of back in the saddle here again. Gosh, we're all over the animal analogies. That's all we've got here for you this week. Thank you for watching. We wish you the best of luck and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.